Morning Show on East Coast FM with Declan Meehan.
Morning Show at East Coast. Now here in the Morning Show we've been focusing on the issue of parental alienation. We've been contacted by hundreds of mothers and fathers as well as grandparents and other family members who have been affected. The stories, as you've been hearing on the air, are heartbreaking. On the line we're joined by Director of Therapy Institute, that's Richard Hogan. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Parental alienation, it has affected you.
Well, I work clinically with the issue, and it's one of the most destructive and most difficult things to work in practice with families who are going through this experience, and in particular, one parent who is experiencing this issue. It is pervasive in our society. Unfortunately, the courts are beginning to acknowledge, and it brings about the utter annihilation of the family.
Some of the people that have been contacting us have said that therapists don't understand parental alienation. You obviously do. The people who come to you, have they been badly affected? Is their outlook on life, changed by the experience?
Well, it's designed to. I agree with that perception. That I suppose it's such an insidious and subtle thing. It's a very difficult thing for practitioners to a lot over the last 4 or 5 years, because it's something I've seen more and more in my clinic. It's designed to the parent who finds himself alienated. It's designed to really consume them. It's designed to, the court system is set up in such a way that it's designed to financially ruin them, and it's also designed to emotionally ruin the person who's been alienated, to the point where they say to themselves, this is just too much, I have to walk away here. And that's what it's kind of designed to do, to force one parent away from their children that they love, and to deny the child the right to love their once loved parent. So as I said to you, it is utter devastation, loved parent. So as I said to you, it is utter devastation for everybody, because the reality of this is the alienating parent needs help too, and they're misguided in their hatred towards their ex-partner, and they're willing to go to these lengths to drive a wedge between their ex-partner and their children. And what you see with this, if you look at the trajectory of this thing, nobody wins. The alienating parent finds themselves alienated later on in their lives, when the child is more abstract in their thinking, and they realize, hang on a second, I actually loved my father, I love my dad, or I love my mom. I never thought that about mom. I don't know why I said these things about dad. Realize where the root of that came from, and how they were coerced into a narrative. So as I say, that it's utter devastation for the family, but for a child's maturation and development and mental health, it's so insidious, it's so destructive.
Yeah, and being clinical director of the Therapy Institute, you've got to picking this or peeling it back. I know all cases can be different, but where do you start with that? Is it listening?
It can be very hard, as you said in your opening there. It's kind of the stories that you've heard over the last number of weeks has been heart-wrenching. When you see a child being coerced into a narrative, it's really about helping the child to see where the narrative came from. It's about reintroducing the child to a sub-narrative that they had about dad, an old story that our mom, that they're good people, that they love them. So it's about untangling the child's emotions from their carer to the person that they're alienating. It's a very soft and gentle approach that you need to go with this. It's not something that you bring in in a striking way. It's a very slow process of untangling those emotions.
And when people go through the process with you, is it trying to make the current situation better? Or do you have any influence on decisions that might have been made legally in the past?
You see, that's the reality. Often you get people coming into the clinic, families coming into the clinic, where they're trying to coerce the therapist the same narrative. So again, it's a very difficult thing to work with, for sure. And I can see why therapists are reluctant to get involved with it, because it is so difficult. And the court system is only beginning to catch up with it. They've got this concept of the child's voice now. But then again, the child's voice is very much, often coerced. So what you're hearing isn't actually reality of the situation. You're hearing a particular narrative driven by somebody. So that's what can happen in therapy for sure. That they're looking for the professional to reinforce the reason why the child is not wanting to see the father or mother. Or in my case, because I talk about it so much, I have a lot of. In generally, I must say, in my own experience, a lot of men, fathers, who come into me because of what's happened to them, and they've read my articles about it, and they're coming looking for advice. So you can work with it in so many different ways.
Actually, when I was asking that, a text came in. When carrying out a Section 32 or 47 report, I presume you know those, and identifying parental alienation taking place, how many times has the therapist written in a report that he's recommending a reversal of custody, considering this is the actionable remedy for parents carrying out parental alienation?
What's the question there? Sorry, I missed the question.
How many times have you written a report of custody?
How many times have I personally, is it?
Yeah, well, that's the question here.
Well, generally...
have you written a report like that?
Yeah, I have written Section 47, Section 32s. Generally, what you do in that scenario, unless there is obvious neglect, what you're trying to do, you might recommend a reversal then of custody, but what you're trying to do is heal. You're trying to bring the relationship back together. It would be, when you think about the child, if the child is with a carer and you remove that child from that care, that's an incredible disruption to their psyche. So what you're trying to do is heal the situation more than to reverse. It's about bringing people back together. Unless obviously there's neglect and there's an obvious safety issue.
Can I take from that then reversal of custody application is part of the problem?
It can be, for sure, yeah.
Because it's part of the war.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
I don't want to offend our texter either.
It's a good idea. It's a good image to use, war, because this is scorched earth stuff. This is where you destroy everything that's good and wholesome.
Yeah, the parent that's with you might be thinking that the brain of the child is being influenced detrimentally, and they just can't convince anybody. So they're in a desperate state. I mean,
that's for sure.
It's very hard to deal with, I'm sure.
Sorry?
I'm sure it's very hard to deal with somebody who feels that nobody is listening to the parent is there, and they're saying, my child is suffering, brain warping or brainwashing or just not in a happy place, and I can't do anything about it.
Well, generally, the parent who's been alienated is incredibly powerless. And there is an inherent bias in our legal system. It's not something that gets talked about too often, but men get an incredibly short straw here, and they get, their point of view and their sense of parental authority is absolutely eroded. So they find it very difficult to deal with this, because the person who has the child as a carer has all the power, and it is incredibly, absolutely, rejected by the system and absolutely powerless. And it is very difficult, as you say, to sit in the therapeutic space and to hear somebody feel this and to feel so powerless about a child that they love and have a right to love, and the child has a right to love them, and to see that denied is a very difficult thing. To love them, and to see that denied is a very difficult thing. As a father, as a human being, as a man, as a husband, it's just a very difficult thing to experience.
So where do we go from here? Obviously, you've got the therapy and that aspect, but in society, reverse some of this or have a better way of dealing with it.
Like Ken Joyce to stand up and talk. I think we need more fathers out there talking about their experience and, forming groups, and mothers forming groups and talking to each other, supporting each other to this. It's through that community, that connection, that we can feel that a shared experience, that might lessen it for us. But I think as a society, we need to look really and see what's happening to our children. And of course, in separation, and there is normative estrangement, and of course, children might want to be with one parent because of a very negative relationship that's developed. But this is different. This is the normative range of parenting, who wants to love their child, and the child wants to love their father or mother, and they're being coerced into a narrative against them, so that punishes the person who's left the home. So it's really about understanding it and the nuances of it, and seeing the differences between normative estrangement and alienation. Estrangement and alienation.
Of course, alienation affects both parents in different relationships.
It really affects everybody. I mean, another voice that never gets heard, that I hear an awful lot in my clinic, is grandparents. And I really feel for them. They're a particular age in their life, and they're being denied access to their child's relationship with their partner. They're getting absolutely roped, brought into this conflict, and they too themselves are becoming alienated. And often in the therapy session, when you get to it, you yourself as the therapist become alienated.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll talk again, Richard. And I was just looking that you've got a book here called Parenting the Screenager. That would be very useful to a lot of parents on that. We must talk about that sometime as well, separately. But thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks very much.
Richard Hogan there. Thank you. Clinical Director of the Therapy Institute. I just thought I mentioned there to Richard at the end, Parenting the Screenager. So to have to maybe get them away, especially in this lockdown. Anyway, it is the morning show, and we're going to hear some music and